Brennan Kael had been aboard the Zollern diplomatic vessel for 12 days when the fever hit. It started behind his eyes, dull and slow, like a hangover that hadn't earned its place. By the time he felt warm to the touch and his knees gave that first telltale wobble, he was inspecting a coolant leak in the vacuum-sealed cargo bay alone. He blinked twice, wiped his forehead with the back of his sleeve, then muttered, "That's new." The diagnostic tablet slipped from his hand and clattered on the floor. He bent to pick it up, and the motion sent a wave of heat coursing through his head like boiling oil. He slumped against the wall, closing his eyes for a second too long. A high-pitched trill buzzed from the door panel. "Brennan Kael, your vital signs have shifted beyond acceptable parameters," came the clipped voice of Syleth, the ship's chief xenomedical officer. "Remain stationary. I am en route." "I'm fine," Brennan said, wiping sweat from his brow again. "Just a bug. I'll sleep it off." "No," Syleth replied flatly. "You will not." The door slid open with a hiss. Syleth's wiry silver body glided in, her limbs moving with sharp precision. Her three eyes locked onto him, and her long fingers slipped a scanner from her sash. "You are infected." "It's just a fever," he said, trying to steady his breathing. "Humans get them all the time." She scanned him anyway. "Your internal temperature has risen by 1.7 degrees. Your metabolism is in a state of rebellion. The breakdown has begun." Brennan blinked. "Rebellion. Systemic failure is imminent. I must initiate cryostasis." He laughed weakly. "Syleth, it's a fever. I need fluids and rest, not a freezer. You have no idea what you are saying. Your brain may already be compromised. I've had worse. Trust me." Syleth turned to the tablet, tapping furiously. "You should have reported this sooner. I didn't think I needed to. I didn't think sneezing once meant the apocalypse." A second figure entered, Ambassador Lurex, taller than Syleth, with translucent green skin and too many elbows. He looked from Brennan to Syleth. "Explain." "He is entering terminal phase," Syleth said. "He insists otherwise." Lurex tilted his head. "Terminal?" "But he is speaking coherently. Momentarily. His species is unpredictable. I recommend immediate extraction." Brennan waved a hand. "Nobody's extracting anything. I'll just go lie down." "You will not leave this chamber," Syleth said. "I will if you don't stop." Brennan tried to stand and nearly fell. Lurex caught his arm with surprising gentleness. "Your tissues are failing?" "No, I'm dehydrated. That coolant leak is drier than a Nevada summer." Syleth turned on a heel. "Enough. Biosuspension field." "Now." "No field," Brennan said. "Seriously. I just need a cot and some water." Lurex looked between them. "What is fever to humans?" "A sign the immune system is doing its job," Brennan said. "Not a death sentence." Syleth narrowed her eyes. "You mean to tell me this is normal?" "Uncomfortable, sure. Dangerous in some cases, but not always." "You're burning alive," she said. "I'm fighting an infection." "By increasing your internal temperature?" "Exactly. That is barbaric." Brennan chuckled dryly. "Try living on Earth sometime." Lurex turned to Syleth. "Suspend extraction. Let him recover. This is madness. He is the only human on board. If this is customary, we must observe." "I'm not a science fair project," Brennan said, finally managing to stand. He wobbled, then leaned against the wall again. "Just point me to the med bay." Syleth relented, though her glare was sharp enough to cut alloy. "You will be monitored. Constantly. Go nuts." 2 hours later, Brennan lay on a cot in the med bay, and 4 in one arm and a biometric patch stuck to his neck. His fever had climbed another half degree, but he was lucid, if sluggish. Syleth stood at the foot of the bed, periodically scanning him while muttering observations into her recorder. Subject remains conscious. Perspiration has increased. Heart rate elevated. No signs of neural collapse. Still not dying, Brennan said hoarsely. "You are not improving either. It takes time." Syleth paused. "You endure this regularly?" "Not regularly, but it's not rare either." Lurex entered with another alien trailing behind, shorter, bulkier, with slate-colored skin and wide-set eyes. He nodded once at Brennan. "This is Brunnick," Lurex said. "Security chief. He has questions." Brunnick stepped forward. "We intercepted your last transmission to Earth. You said you were a little under the weather. Was this a coded alert?" "No," Brennan said. "It means I'm sick." "Why not say that?" "It's just an expression." Brunnick folded his arms. Your language is deceptive. It's called tact. Brennan looked to Lurex. Your species is absurd. Tell me about it, Brennan mumbled. Over the next 24 hours, the fever broke. Brennan's temperature came down gradually, and he managed to eat a few bites of broth without throwing up. Syleth remained unconvinced. You should have suffered organ failure by now. Guess I'm tougher than I look. I do not understand. Your body burns itself, and you accept it. It's how we survive. And if it had killed you, then Syleth would have had the last word. Terrifying thought. She didn't blink. It still could. Thanks for the pep talk. 3 days later, Brennan was upright, if not entirely steady. He walked the corridor slowly, escorted by Brennan, who still didn't trust that the fever wasn't contagious. Do all humans experience this condition? Yeah. Kids, adults, everyone. And you walk around during it? If we can. Sometimes we stay in bed. Depends on how bad it gets. You function while breaking down. I guess so. Brennan shook his head. You're reckless. We're adaptable. They reached the observation deck, where Lurex was waiting beside a viewing panel that looked out over a binary star system. You are recovered, Lurex said. Mostly. You will attend the council summit tomorrow as planned? Wouldn't miss it. Lurex hesitated. After what we observed, your presence may carry diplomatic significance. Oh, you endured what we believed fatal. Your resilience will affect negotiations. I didn't sign up to be a symbol. Nevertheless, you are one. That night, Brennan lay in his quarters, legs aching from the walk. He stared at the ceiling, exhaling slowly. He'd only had a fever. But in a ship full of aliens who thought a mild temperature spike meant certain death, that fever had turned into an interstellar case study. And tomorrow, somehow, he was supposed to represent Earth's endurance in front of 20 species who thought his immune system was a biological weapon. All because he shrugged and said, I'll sleep it off. Brennan shifted in his formal uniform, which felt like it had been tailored by someone who hated knees. The collar scratched his neck, and the thick fabric trapped heat like it was designed to punish perspiration. He had managed to shower and shave without tipping over, but the dizziness still lurked like a bored predator, waiting for another chance. The summit chamber was massive, circular, and filled with the low hum of overlapping languages. Delegates from over 20 species were seated in rising tiers that encircled a central speaking platform. Translucent screens floated overhead, displaying live translations and biometric data from the participants. Brennan stood just off stage, watching a representative from the Xanthri Confederation attempt to explain trade discrepancies using a series of scent puffs that had to be interpreted by a scent-to-speech converter. It hissed every few seconds, emitting a voice that sounded like a broken flute trying to apologize. Syleth appeared beside him, wearing a flowing white robe stitched with neural thread that shimmered faintly with her bioelectrical impulses. When you're called, speak only for 3 minutes. Do not suggest alliances. Do not challenge existing treaties. Do not. I'm here to show them I didn't melt from a fever, not rewrite the galaxy's bylaws. She didn't nod, just blinked once, slowly. Your cardiovascular markers are elevated. Yeah, I'm nervous. And hot. This jacket makes me feel like a microwaved meatloaf. You remain unstable. Thanks for the vote of confidence. Across the chamber, Lurex was speaking with a group of floating beings that resembled jellyfish if jellyfish had antennae and wore monocles. One of them noticed Brennan and drifted slightly to get a better look, its tentacles curling inward. A chime signaled the end of the current speaker's time. The Xanthri scent puffs stopped abruptly, and the chamber's lights shifted, focusing on the center platform. Representative Brennan Kael of Earth, the system announced in a neutral tone. Brennan stepped forward, resisting the urge to tug at his collar. Every eye, lens, and photoreceptor in the room tracked him. He cleared his throat and spoke into the translator node embedded in the podium. I'm here because I had a fever. A murmur rippled through the crowd. One of the crystalline delegates from the Threxian Accord tilted its facets sharply, the equivalent of a double take. On Earth, that means I was sick, not dying. Our bodies heat up to fight off infections. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't. This time it did. He paused, letting the words sink in. I didn't do anything heroic. I drank water, rested, and annoyed my doctor. But apparently, that's enough to get me a seat at the big table. A low chuckle came from somewhere in the upper tiers. Brennan couldn't tell who it belonged to. He took a sip from the water bulb on the podium. I'm not here to pretend humans are invincible. We're not. We break bones, catch viruses, and sometimes forget where we parked. What we are consistently is stubborn. We adapt. We survive. And we do it with an alarming lack of elegance. There was a brief silence. Then one of the delegates of the Drevlin swarm flared its dorsal lights in what the briefing packet had described as approval. I'm not a scientist or a soldier. I'm just a guy who got sick, didn't die, and now has to explain that to 20 civilizations who thought I should have burst into flames. He stepped back. No applause. No boos. Just a few more flares of dorsal lights, a couple of nods, and a large, clicking chitter from a race he hadn't seen before. Later that cycle, Brennan sat in the galley, legs stretched out under the table, sipping broth from a curved bowl designed for species with no lips. He'd spilled some on his sleeve, but didn't care enough to change. Across from him, Brunnick was chewing something gelatinous and blue. You said nothing of strategic value, Brunnick said. Wasn't asked to. Your presence caused the Tormathai to delay their motion to withdraw from the coalition. I didn't mention them. They cited your resilience as a reason to reconsider their evaluation of biological liabilities. I think that's the nicest insult I've ever received. Brunnick took another bite. They are concerned your species may be more difficult to eliminate than previously calculated. Charming. They're not wrong. You recovered from a catabolic spike without external intervention. I drank some water and slept. Exactly. Unassisted. Brennan leaned back, wincing as his ribs reminded him they'd been through a coughing marathon. You ever get sick? Only once. I was 6. I fell into a fungal stream on Krelos 5. My body temperature increased by 0.4 degrees. My family performed the receding vigil. Sounds grim. I survived. Barely. And now you eat blue jelly and monitor diplomatic fallout from a guy who caught a cold. Brunnick stared at him. Do all humans use humor as insulation? Pretty much. It's cheaper than therapy. The lights in the galley dimmed slightly, signaling the start of the next ship cycle. Brennan stood, bowl in hand, and walked toward the disposal chute. As he passed a group of technicians polishing a sensor array, one of them a slender, moss-skinned being with 3 fingers and no mouth held out a small patch with a red symbol etched in it. Brennan hesitated. What's this? The technician tapped its chest, then pointed at him. Then it made a slow motion of curling forward and rising again. Healing? Is this your version of a get-well-soon card? The being nodded once and turned back to its station. Back in his quarters, Brennan attached the patch to the wall and changed into something less ceremonial. He sat on the edge of his bunk and looked at the personal console. A message blinked from Earth. He opened it. Myra's face filled the screen. She looked tired but amused. Just saw the summit. You look like you were waiting for someone to throw a pie. Proud of you. We're sending over some updated med packs, just in case. Try not to catch anything else until they arrive. He shut the screen and lay back, exhaling slowly. Someone knocked on the door. It slid open to reveal Lurex holding a small container. I brought you this, he said. What is it? Fermented root extract. Many species use it to commemorate survival. Smells like paint thinner. It is not for consumption. Of course not. Lurex set it down. You altered the tone of the summit. I didn't mean to. Intent is less important than impact. Brennan sat up. So what happens now? Several factions are reevaluating their expectations of human endurance. Because I didn't pass out in public? Because you recovered without assistance and then made jokes about it? I really need to stop talking. No. You need to keep doing exactly what you're doing. Lurex left without another word. Brennan looked at the container. It hummed faintly, like it was fermenting reality itself. He nudged it under his bunk with one foot. Lights dimmed again for night hours. Outside the viewport, a nebula drifted past, green and gold like an oil spill in starlight. He pulled the blanket over himself, eyes closing slowly. Somewhere, entire councils were debating the implications of his immune response. He just wanted to sleep without sweating through another shirt. Brennan's appetite returned 2 days after the summit, which he celebrated by demolishing a tray of steamed root slabs that tasted vaguely like garlic bread if it had been filtered through chalk. He didn't care. The fact that he could chew without nausea felt like a personal victory. Still, Silith had insisted on daily check-ins, which she conducted with the gentle bedside manner of a customs audit. Your glucose levels have stabilized, she said, running a scanner over his arm. Muscle density remains below baseline. I'm not training for the Olympics. I just want to be able to walk without feeling like I wrestled a vending machine. You have not returned to baseline stamina. No, but I'm not dead either, which continues to be the theme. Syleth paused, then gave a small, reluctant nod. Your immune system has recalibrated. I'll add that to my resume. She turned off the scanner and handed him a flexible nutrient strip. Consume this. He sniffed it. This smells like aquarium water. It promotes mitochondrial recovery. He bit it in half anyway. Tastes like someone juiced a shoe. Then it is working. They were in the med bay's observation chamber, a space that overlooked the recovery pods but also doubled as a quiet corner for species who needed lower light and minimal noise. Brennan sat on the edge of a reclining bench, legs swinging idly while Syleth recorded notes in a language that resembled vertical slashes of lightning. No more monitoring patches, he asked, rubbing the spot on his neck where one had been for a week. You are no longer a biohazard. Flattering. A quiet chime interrupted them. The chamber door slid open and a delegate Brennan hadn't met before entered, a tall, spiral-limbed being with skin like polished coral and eyes recessed beneath a bony hood. It moved with the unhurried grace of something that had never been touched by weather. I am Soren of the Kestari Hive, it said, its voice modulated through a translator embedded in its chest. I wish to speak with the human who survived. Brennan blinked. You found him. Soren approached, stopping an arm's length away. You endured internal combustion and retained cognition. Well, not combustion. More like slow simmer. Syleth interjected. His fever peaked at 103 degrees Fahrenheit. Soren turned toward her. How did his cells not rupture? They very nearly did. But they did not. No, Brennan said. They didn't. Soren extended a limb and gently tapped a thin device against Brennan's shoulder. It beeped once. What was that? Authorization. You are now permitted to enter restricted observation deck Theta. I didn't ask till you were being studied. Brennan glanced at Syleth. Am I supposed to feel honored or worried? Both, she said. Theta deck was located just after the secondary transit ring, accessible only by a stairwell-sized vertical lift that moved slower than molasses in low gravity. When Brennan arrived, the doors opened to reveal a chamber of concentric rings, each lined with transparent tanks. Inside, dozens of alien specimens floated in viscous fluid, their bodies twitching occasionally under the pulse of analysis beams. Soren was already inside, standing beside a console that projected rotating models of human anatomy. You're running simulations, Brennan said, stepping in. Yes. We have never encountered a species that courts cellular instability as casually as yours. We don't court it. We just don't panic when it happens. A holographic model of a human immune system expanded, showing white blood cells engulfing pathogens. Soren rotated it slowly. When our bodies encounter infection, we isolate it and suspend function. You, however, escalate. It's not a strategy. It's just what happens. Soren studied him. You are not designed for durability. And yet, I grew up in a city where we had to shovel our cars out of snowbanks just to get to work. After that, a fever's just Tuesday. Soren rotated the projection again, zooming in on a lymph node. You healed without external reprogramming. Not the first time. Won't be the last. A pause. Then Soren gestured to one of the tanks. Inside floated a pale, eel-like creature with dozens of eyes and a translucent spine. This is a Varick larva. It cannot survive fluctuations of more than half a degree. We have lost entire colonies due to ambient temperature variance. I'm guessing they don't do well with fevers. They perish immediately. Brennan crossed his arms. So what's the point of all this? To figure out why I didn't die, or to decide whether humans are a threat? Both. He exhaled. Look, I'm not a diplomat. I'm not even a biologist. But if you're trying to figure out how to weaponize our immune systems, you're going to be disappointed. Half the time, they turn on us instead. Soren's eyes narrowed slightly. You mean autoimmunity? Yeah. Sometimes our bodies get confused and start attacking our own cells. It's messy. There's no perfect system. Soren was silent for a long moment, then deactivated the projection. You are an evolutionary contradiction. I'll take that as a compliment. Later that cycle, Brennan returned to his quarters to find a message waiting. Not from Earth, but internal flagged from Lurex's diplomatic channel. Your presence has altered more than diplomatic posture, it read. You have inadvertently triggered a re-evaluation of biological classification standards. A cross-species resilience index is being drafted. You are its baseline. Brennan stared at the screen, then leaned back in his chair. He hadn't asked to be a benchmark. He hadn't asked to be anything but temporary technical support. But here he was, the galactic gold standard for not dying of a fever. The next day, he was summoned to the Arboretum, one of the few places aboard the vessel where humidity was kept at Earth levels. It was humid, green, and smelled faintly of citrus and ozone. Lurex met him among the tall fronds of an imported Zensheri fern. A gesture is being prepared. What kind of gesture? A formal acknowledgement of your contribution. I didn't contribute anything. You survived. And you spoke. That's a low bar. It was a bar no one expected you to clear. Brennan rubbed his temple. Please tell me this isn't going to be another ceremony. Not a ceremony. A seed. He frowned. Come again. Lurex handed him a small, iridescent pod. This will be planted in your name. It is a tradition among the Trillari. We recognize beings who endure the impossible. It was a fever. And yet here you are. Brennan turned the pod over in his hand. It was warm, faintly pulsing. Probably bioactive. Probably not something you should drop. Fine, he said. Plant the thing. Lurex nodded once. It will grow in the Arboretum. When it blooms, it will bear your identifier. I'm going to be a tree? Symbolically. Great. I've always wanted to be foliage. That evening, Brennan stood alone in the Arboretum, watching a maintenance drone prepare the soil. He set the pod down carefully, then stepped back. No fanfare. No speeches. Just a seed in alien soil, planted because he hadn't died when everyone expected him to. He watched the drone cover it with dark, glittering earth. Then he turned and walked away, leaving the pod to its work. Behind him, the lights dimmed to simulate twilight. Something chirped in the canopy above a synthetic bird, programmed to mimic Earth's evening sounds. Brennan smiled and kept walking.